Stop! Stop the playback! Dr. Vivian Ashford's hand was shaking. She'd been listening through professional studio headphones for maybe 90 seconds. Now she pulled them off like they'd burned her, stared at me, at the digital recorder on the table between us, back at me. Where did you record this? North Cascades, August 14th, between 2 and 4 a.m. Why? What is it? She didn't answer immediately, just sat there, silent. Her face doing something I'd never seen a scientist's face do before. Not confusion, not skepticism, fear, professional, credentialed, peer-reviewed fear. Finally, play it again, from the beginning, and don't interrupt me this time. I pressed play, watched her face as she listened, watched the color drain, watched her eyes widen, watched her grip the edge of the table. 4 minutes, the entire recording. She listened without moving, without breathing almost. When it ended, she removed the headphones carefully, methodically, like she needed something normal to do while her brain processed the impossible. Mr. Brennan, I've been studying acoustic communication for 30 years, analyzed whale songs, dolphin clicks, primate vocalizations, bird calls, everything that makes sound, I've studied it. I know what animal communication sounds like, I know what human language sounds like, and I know what random noise sounds like. She paused, looked at me. This is none of those things, and all of them, simultaneously. This is structured communication from a vocal apparatus I can't identify, using patterns I can't categorize, conveying information I can't translate. But it's definitely language, definitely intentional, definitely intelligent. And Mr. Brennan? It's not human, it's not any known species. This is... She trailed off, started again. This changes everything. Everything we think we know about intelligence in North America. About undiscovered species. About what's possible. You need to tell me exactly what happened, from the beginning, every detail, because what you've recorded here, this is the most important acoustic evidence I've encountered in my entire career. So I told her. Started at the beginning. August 13th, 2003. When I was 42 years old and thought I was just investigating noise complaints. Russell Brennan. That's me. 63 now. Been a park ranger for 41 years. North Cascades National Park, Washington State. Seen everything. Bears, cougars, lost hikers, illegal camping, marijuana grows, drunk tourists, weather emergencies, search and rescue. The whole spectrum of wilderness management. But I'd never seen, heard, anything like what happened that August. August 13th, 2003. Radio call came in around 7 p.m. Campers at Cascade Pass reporting strange sounds overnight. Multiple nights, keeping them awake, making them nervous. Could I check it out? Standard complaint. Usually turns out to be nothing. Coyotes sound weird to city people. Owls, even deer, can make unsettling noises during mating season. I told dispatch I'd hike up there next morning, do a patrol, talk to the campers, probably explain it was just wildlife and everyone could relax. August 14th, started hiking at 5 a.m. Wanted to reach the area by dawn, maybe catch whatever was making the sounds if it was active at night. Brought standard gear, flashlight, radio, first aid kit, bear spray, and because I was getting scientific about wildlife lately, a digital audio recorder, professional grade, the kind researchers use. Picked it up on eBay for $200. Used it to document bird calls mostly, elk bugles during rut, built up a little library of park sounds. Reached Cascade Pass around 6:30 a.m. Found the campers, 2 couples, mid-30s, from Seattle. Experienced backpackers based on their gear, not the type to spook easy. Ranger, thank God, one of them said. Mark, software engineer. We barely slept. Those sounds, they're not normal, they're not animals. At least not like any animal I've heard. What did they sound like? That's the thing. I can't describe them. Low, rumbling, but also structured, like they were communicating, like language almost, but not human language, something else. His wife, Jennifer, agreed. We heard them 3 nights straight, always between midnight and 4 a.m., always from the same direction. She pointed northwest, toward dense old-growth forest, away from trails, deep wilderness. I told them I'd investigate, asked them to stay put while I checked the area. Then I headed into the forest. Northwest, following their directions. The terrain got rough fast. No trails here, just game paths, deadfall. Thick undergrowth, old-growth cedar and Douglas fir creating canopy so dense it was twilight, at ground level even in daytime. Perfect habitat for anything that wanted privacy. I walked for maybe 2 hours, didn't find anything unusual, no tracks, no scat, no evidence of large animals. Was about to turn back when I heard it, faint, distant, but unmistakable. A sound, not wind, not water, not any bird or mammal I recognized. Low frequency, rumbling, but with structure, rhythm, like Mark said, like communication. I stopped, listened. The sound came again. Clearer this time. Definitely vocalization. Definitely intentional. And definitely not anything in my 40 years of wilderness experience. I pulled out my recorder, hit record, started moving slowly toward the sound, being quiet, trying not to spook whatever was making it. The sound continued. Irregular intervals, sometimes 30 seconds between vocalizations, sometimes several minutes. But consistent direction, northwest, deeper into the forest. I followed for another hour. The sounds got clearer, closer, and more complex, not just single notes, patterns, sequences, call and response, almost like conversation. Multiple sources, at least 2 different individuals making sounds back and forth, communicating. The quality changed as I got closer. What had been distant rumbles became articulated sounds. I could hear variations, modulations, changes in pitch and tone that seemed deliberate, intentional. One voice, deeper, resonant, would make a series of sounds, low-frequency rumbles with clear structure, rising and falling tones, then pause, silence for maybe 10 seconds, then a different voice, higher-pitched, lighter, would respond. Different pattern, different rhythm, but clearly related to the first sounds. Answering, agreeing, disagreeing, impossible to know, but definitely responsive, definitely conversation. My hands were shaking as I held the recorder, extended the microphone toward the sounds. Professional instinct saying, document this. Whatever this is, get it recorded. But also, and this was the part that scared me, gut instinct saying, you're not supposed to be here. You're eavesdropping on something private, something that doesn't want to be heard by humans. The forest around me felt different, heavier, watched. Like the trees themselves were aware I was violating something, crossing a boundary that shouldn't be crossed. The normal sounds had stopped. No birds, no squirrels, no insects, just those voices and my breathing. And my heart hammering so hard, I worried the recorder would pick it up, ruin the audio with my fear. The conversation, because that's what it was, I had no doubt anymore, continued back and forth. The deeper voice and the higher voice, sometimes overlapping briefly, sometimes long pauses between exchanges, sometimes rapid fire, 3 or 4 vocalizations in quick succession from one source, then immediate response from the other, urgent, excited, arguing. I had no framework to interpret emotional content, but the pattern was unmistakable. This was structured communication. This was language. And then, a third voice joined, different from both others, mid-range frequency, different rhythm entirely, and when it spoke, the other 2 went silent, listened. This voice made longer vocalizations, more complex patterns. The others didn't interrupt, just listened. When it finished, the higher voice responded briefly. The deeper voice made a short sound. Agreement? Acknowledgement? Then all 3 went silent for maybe 30 seconds. I stayed frozen, barely breathing, recorder extended, getting all of it, every sound, every pause, every inflection, evidence, proof, documentation of something that officially didn't exist, something that proved consciousness existed in forms we refused to recognize. Then, and I'll never forget this moment, all three voices made sounds simultaneously, harmonized, different tones creating chord, deliberate, beautiful, haunting. Then silence, complete silence. Even the birds stopped. The forest held its breath. My heart was hammering, sweat running down my back despite the cool morning, because I understood, on some primitive level that bypassed rational thought, I'd just witnessed something sacred, something private, something humans weren't supposed to hear. That harmonized sound, that was significance, that was meaning, that was... what? Conclusion? Blessing? Agreement? Prayer? I had no words for it, no framework, but it felt important, final, like ending to a ceremony, like amen after a prayer, like something that marked transition from one state to another. The sounds continued. I recorded everything, maybe 20 minutes total, different vocalizations, different patterns. Then, suddenly, silence, complete silence. Even the birds stopped. The forest held its breath. Then I heard movement, heavy movement, multiple sources, coming from where the sounds had been, moving fast, moving away, crashing through undergrowth, powerful, large, plural, at least two individuals, maybe more, fleeing. They'd detected me, known I was there, chose to run rather than confront. Within seconds gone, just forest sounds again, birds resuming, normal, like nothing had happened. I stood there for a long time, recorder still running, capturing silence now, my breathing, my racing heart probably, processing what I'd just experienced. Something had been here, something large enough to make significant noise when fleeing, something intelligent enough to communicate with structured vocalizations, something aware enough to detect my presence despite my careful approach, something that chose flight over fight, that valued privacy, that existed in this forest unknown and unconfirmed. I hiked back to the campers, told them I'd investigated, found evidence of large animals, but nothing dangerous, recommended they relocate if the sounds bothered them, gave standard ranger advice, didn't mention what I'd actually heard, didn't mention what I'd recorded, because I didn't know what I'd recorded. Needed to analyze it first, understand it before sharing it. Back at Ranger Station, I transferred the audio to my computer, listened through headphones, and my professional skepticism started crumbling, because this wasn't random animal sounds. This was structured, patterned, intentional. This was communication. I spent 3 days analyzing it, using free software, spectrogram analysis, frequency patterns, amplitude variations, looking for anything that would explain it as known wildlife. Found nothing. The vocalizations were too low for most mammals, too complex for the species that could produce those frequencies. And the patterns, the rhythm, the call and response, the variations that suggested meaning, this wasn't instinct. This was language. I needed expert opinion. Contacted Dr. Vivian Ashford at University of Washington, acoustic specialist, published researcher, credible, professional, skeptical in the right ways. Sent her the files, asked for analysis, expected dismissal, expected interesting but probably just bears or likely hoax. Got neither. Got, we need to meet immediately. Don't share these files with anyone else. This is significant. August 20th, 2003. Met Dr. Ashford at her lab in Seattle. Brought the original recorder. Brought my field notes. Brought GPS coordinates of the recording location. She listened once, stopped, listened again, then gave me that look, that fear. And now she was telling me, this is language. From an unknown species, this changes everything. Over the following months, Dr. Ashford analyzed those recordings in ways I couldn't imagine. She brought in colleagues, other acoustic specialists, linguists, cryptozoologists even, though she hated that term. Everyone signed non-disclosure agreements. Everyone worked quietly. No publications, no press releases, just science. Careful, thorough, documented science. Their conclusions were unanimous and impossible. The vocalizations showed structure consistent with language, grammar-like patterns, syntax-like rules, vocabulary-like variations, not human language, not any known primate communication, something unique, something developed independently, but unmistakably linguistic. The frequency ranges were remarkable. These voices could produce sounds from 40 Hz to 8,000 Hz. Humans manage about 85 Hz to 3,000 Hz. These speakers had range exceeding humans by significant margins, suggesting vocal anatomy unlike ours, larger, more complex, more capable. The recordings captured at least 3 distinct voices, different pitch, different timbre, different patterns, individuals communicating with each other, coordinated, conversational, social. The content, what they were actually saying, remained untranslatable. No Rosetta Stone, no reference points. But the analysis suggested information exchange, not just emotional vocalizations like animal calls. Actual information, descriptions maybe, warnings, plans, thoughts, ideas. Impossible to confirm, but the complexity suggested it. Dr. Ashford's final report, the one she never published, concluded, "These recordings provide acoustic evidence of an unknown hominid species in North America. The vocalizations demonstrate intelligence, language capability, and social complexity previously uncredited to any unconfirmed species. This is the most significant cryptozoological evidence recorded to date, and it demands further investigation." But investigation was impossible. I tried returning to the location multiple times over multiple years, never heard the sounds again, never found evidence of their presence. They'd moved, or they'd learned humans were recording, or they'd always been transient, and that night was chance encounter. Whatever the reason, gone. The recordings were all that remained. Dr. Ashford wanted to publish, wanted to share with the scientific community, wanted recognition for the most important discovery of her career. But I said no, said the recordings were mine, made on public land during official duty, my choice what happened to them. And I chose silence. Why, she demanded to know. Why hide the most important evidence ever recorded? Because of what I'd felt in that forest. The moment before they fled, that sense of, you're not supposed to be here. You're violating privacy. You're recording what was never meant to be heard. I'd eavesdropped on a private conversation, had documented beings who'd successfully remained hidden for centuries, who'd chosen anonymity, who'd built entire existence around not being confirmed. And my recordings threatened that. What right did I have? What right did science have? To expose beings who clearly didn't want exposure, to confirm species that survived through secrecy, to satisfy human curiosity at the cost of their safety, their privacy, their chosen way of existing, Dr. Ashford argued, hard, for months. This was science. This was knowledge. This was important. Humanity deserved to know. I understood her position, even agreed partly, but I couldn't escape that feeling, that sense I'd violated something. That publishing would be compounding the violation. Eventually she stopped asking, respected my decision, kept her analysis private. We became friends, actually. She'd call sometimes, ask if I'd heard anything new, share other researchers' findings, keep me updated on the quiet community of scientists who studied this privately, who had evidence, who chose, like me, to keep it confidential. I retired from Park Service in 2018, 60 years old, 41 years of service. The recordings came with me, still have them, still listen occasionally, still hear that structured communication, that language, that proof of intelligence we refuse to acknowledge. What have I learned in the 21 years since that recording? What keeps me up some nights, headphones on, listening to voices that shouldn't exist? Questions mostly, not answers, just questions. What right do we have to knowledge about beings that don't want to be known? We act like discovery is always good, always justified, always worthy. But what about the discovered? Don't they get a say? These beings, whatever they are, have successfully avoided confirmation for centuries, millennia maybe. That's not accident. That's intention. That's strategy. And my recording, my accidental eavesdropping, threatened to undo all of it. For what? Scientific curiosity, human satisfaction, career advancement for Dr. Ashford? None of those seem sufficient to violate that intention, that right to privacy, that choice to remain unknown. But then, don't humans deserve truth? Don't we have the right to know what shares this planet with us, what walks in our forests, what possesses intelligence and language we don't recognize? Isn't ignorance dangerous? Doesn't knowing make us better, more careful, more respectful? Maybe. Or maybe knowing makes us hunters, makes us studiers, makes us destroyers of the very things we claim to value. Maybe their secrecy is their only defense against us, and maybe taking that away, even unintentionally, is the greatest harm we could cause. I think about those voices sometimes, wonder who they were, what they were discussing, where they are now. Did they have families, communities, culture? Of course they did. You don't develop language without all of that. Language requires social complexity, requires things worth communicating about, requires shared understanding, shared existence, shared what? Life? Consciousness? Whatever we want to call the experience of being aware, being alive, being part of something larger than yourself. Those were people, not human people, but people. Beings with inner lives, with thoughts, with relationships, with things they needed to talk about at 2 a.m. in a forest they probably considered their home, their territory, their private space, and I recorded them without permission, without their knowledge initially, then intentionally once I realized what I was hearing. I documented their most private moments, their conversation, their existence, for science, for evidence, for proof I'm not even using. What does that make me? Sometimes I think I should destroy the recordings, delete them, remove the evidence, give them back the privacy I stole. Let them return to mystery, to undocumented existence, to safety through secrecy. But I can't. Because what if someday that evidence matters? What if someday their existence needs proving to protect them? What if confirmation becomes their salvation rather than their doom? Do I have the right to destroy that possibility, that future option, that insurance policy against their extinction? See? Questions, no answers. Just ethical dilemmas I rotate through at 3 a.m. when I can't sleep. When I pull out those headphones and listen again, when I hear those voices, those people, talking about whatever concerned them that night in August 2003, when I'm reminded that consciousness exists in forms we don't acknowledge, that intelligence surrounds us unconfirmed, that we share this world with beings we've decided don't exist because not existing is easier than reconsidering what deserves rights, what deserves protection, what deserves to live unmolested by our need to know. Dr. Ashford died last year, 78 years old, never published her analysis, kept her word, kept the secret. I went to her funeral, met her daughter, who said, "Mom talked about your recordings sometimes, said they were the most important work she'd ever done, even though no one would ever know about it, even though it would never advance her career. She said some truths serve better as privately known rather than publicly confirmed, and your recordings, your choice, taught her that. She respected you for it, wanted you to know that." I think about that a lot, about truths that serve better private, about knowledge that harms more than helps, about respect that looks like silence rather than publication, about protecting beings by refusing to confirm they exist. Is that wisdom? Or is that cowardice? Is that ethical? Or is that patronizing? I don't know. Still don't know 21 years later. What I do know is this: language is sacred. It's how we share our interior lives, how we connect, how we build relationships and communities and cultures. And when you record someone's language without permission, when you document their private communications without consent, you're violating something fundamental, something that transcends species. You're stealing their privacy, their autonomy, their right to control their own story. And no amount of scientific value justifies that. Not really. Not when you sit with it. Not when you listen to those voices and recognize them as people rather than subjects. Not when you understand that every recording session was a violation, however unintentional, however well-meaning, however scientifically valuable. Still a violation. I'm 63 now. Those voices are 21 years old on those recordings. The beings who made them, are they still alive? Still out there somewhere? Still communicating in frequencies we barely detect? Still building lives in territories we think are empty? Still existing in the margins we haven't destroyed yet? God, I hope so. Hope they're thriving. Hope they're safe. Hope they're unknown. Hope they stay unknown. Hope whatever drove them to remain hidden for centuries continues protecting them. Because we won't. We never do. We discover. We study. We love things to death. We protect them into extinction. We care in ways that destroy. And they're better off without our care, without our knowledge, without our confirmation. So the recordings stay private, stay with me. Will die with me probably, unless something changes, unless their existence needs proving someday, unless confirmation becomes necessary for their survival. Then, and only then, will I release them. Will I share what I heard in that forest, what I stole, what I've been carrying for 21 years, not as trophy, not as proof I was right, but as evidence they deserve protection. They deserve rights. They deserve to exist unmolested. They deserve everything we claim for ourselves but rarely extend to others because they're people, different people, unknown people, unconfirmed people, but people nonetheless, with language, with communication, with interior lives as rich and complex as ours, deserving the same privacy, the same respect, the same right to remain unknown if that's what they choose. That's what those recordings taught me. That's what I'm dying knowing. That's the burden and blessing of having heard voices we're not supposed to hear, of knowing truths we're not supposed to know, of carrying evidence we're not supposed to have, and choosing, however imperfectly, to honor their privacy over our curiosity, their rights over our knowledge, their existence over our need to confirm it.